Hello all, I'm coming at you today with another chapter of the audiobook of my original story, fantasy, sci-fi, adventure thing called Catalyst. So if this is your first time, thanks for coming. Hope you stay and enjoy it. Definitely check out the prologue or chapter 1 first if you want the context of what's going on. But basically, I'm just going to get right into this. Sorry for the wait. I had to get a new editor. My old one kind of dropped off the face of the earth, but I put a lot of editing and work into this chapter, and I think it should be a lot of fun for you guys. So let's get into it. Chapter 2. The mana transmission terminal was another innovation brought about by the king Verox himself. It used mana energy to animate foes known as spawns, the perfect targets for combat training. There was never any need to hold back. And yet, on second thought, do you really think this is a good idea? I asked Leo. Of course, he said, careful not to be rude in his disappointment. He couldn't activate the MTT without me by the king's rules, and I knew that frustrated him. It's the best avenue to increase our aptitude for combat and functions as a great workout as well. Sure, it's ideal, but it's also built for the adults at the castle. This is true, Zenron, but talented young people like those from the Key program can do passingly well with it. You and I have done fine before, especially against soldiers. We should aim to improve upon that. I sighed. You're right, of course. I'm just letting my fear of the third round and beyond get the better of me, I admitted. Then I picked up the belt that held my sheathed blade and fastened it around my waist, feeling the comfortable weight on my left hip. I set my hesitation aside and walked across the hard, clay-like courtyard to reach the terminal in the center of a large clearing. As usual, no one was waiting to use the terminal. Few people were actually allowed to, and the elites generally preferred to train at night. Some would actually train exclusively during deep night. While I approached, the terminal scanned my retina to make sure I was an approved user. When I stood immediately before the machine, I put my finger into a slot where a needle pricked it, extracted blood to test DNA, and then sterilized the wound and covered it with generic skin cells, creating the illusion of instant healing. I winced at the sudden sharp pain, but acknowledged that as a fighter, I would have to get used to far worse. Once it had confirmed my DNA, the black machine that seemed like an unambiguously advanced printer lit up in lines with a bluish glow as if cobalt blood began to flow through the machine's veins. The hard but nearly transparent tinted lucidium screen requested my 32-digit password, which I promptly provided via touchscreen to prevent the machine from locking. At this point, the panel displayed options for standard mode, survival mode, round select. Hoping to accomplish something new, I selected standard mode and readied myself for the rounds to come. Then, at the voiceover's prompt, Leo and I walked onto the center of a circular panel of darker stone. Once we were inside, a viscous fluid formed a translucent dome around the fighting area with a radius of 25 meters. This dome could make certain that no magic or physical momentum would escape this area, leaving the rest of the garden unscathed. The floor had a sigma radiation current running through it, like active Gren steel, and this byproduct of mana use made the material essentially unbreakable. Presently, however, I focused on the laser projectors embedded in the fluid surrounding us, and moments later, I would have to watch them very carefully. A voice boomed which, like everything else, was limited to the enclosed dome. Round 1 will now commence. If a laser targets you for a full second, it will fire a 5 femtosecond pulse. Avoid lasers to progress. The round began. I looked around rapidly, finding all the red beams scanning along the ground. 4 traced along in my direction, and I ran hard to my left to evade them, watching the positions of the other beams. One near Leo meant that if I kept my head high, I would get zapped without even noticing. But if I made myself horizontal, I would be an easy target for the lasers near myself. Thus I ran, staggering and ducking below and around the beams. Then, aligning briefly with Leo, I noticed a red dot on my skin. My right foot pushed off of the ground hard and accelerated before the beam fired. I heard the hiss of the beam's heat in the stone where I was a moment ago. However, I had made my way out of the situation, and I let myself feel the exhilaration of the run. Figuring the trajectory of a laser based on its projector and the dot on the ground, I leapt and rotated my body, arcing my back like a high jumper to clear it. But when I landed, red dots closed in from all sides. I sidestepped into a hard sprint, running along the perimeter of the arena and ducking low beneath the projectors that rotated near my head all around. And then I noticed the series of red dots scanning the ground in front of me. I landed hard into a backward-leaning stance, cutting my momentum and stopping just short of getting zapped. It was at that point that my vision looked beyond the lasers again and relaxed for a moment. I saw Leo several meters away with sweat beading up on his face and realized my own state. My skin was glistening with sweat as well, and beyond that, my heavy breathing bordered on hyperventilation. However, I couldn't worry too much about my physical state yet. I was breathing, and the next round was about to begin. Despite the physical and mental intensity of the training, I allowed myself to feel some enjoyment. This one is more team-oriented, Leo, so I'll stay in front. Cover me. My friend smiled widely, his dark eyes shining with resolve. You can count on me. I stood ready, gripping the cold blast windings of my saber's handle with anticipation. A terrific metallic sound rung out as I pulled the reflective steel blade from its duller scabbard. A slightly chipped golden enamel covered the protectively woven basket hilt that shielded my blade hand from harm. The curved blade, which was several inches longer than my arm and much more threatening, shone like the sun, even in the somewhat dark MTT arena. I turned the weapon upright as I took a deep breath to calm my anticipating nerves. All of a sudden, liquid metamorphite rose and took on humanoid forms. Dark power formed what looked like puffy shadows on the ground and enveloped these shapes immediately. In a mere moment, a pair of ebon soldiers stood before me, wielding dark-as-night longswords. As they extended their front legs into a stance, I grew a bit nervous, but I looked to Leo and found reassurance in his nod. I then extended my own right leg and held my sword at an angle, as if it could extend through my foes 10 meters away. Round 2 will now commence. Kill all of the soldiers to progress. And with that, I pushed off hard with my left leg and closed the gap to face the soldiers. The one on the right took a slight lead in coming only to fall to Leo's arrow. I turned to the left soldier and, shouting in an attempt to drive my fear away, met its blade head-on and forced it back. It came again with a downward swing as I noted 3 more spawning several meters away. I stepped to my side and held my blade above my head at an angle. As the foe's blade slid along mine like rain down a rooftop, I spun and pulled my curved blade through the spawn's leg, splattering dark liquid metamorphite to the ground. Pivoting quickly, I rushed to face the other enemies. Leo picked off one of the 3 before I reached the group, but the other 2 guarded their crouched stances with rounded shields, keeping his arrows off of them. Things got more complicated when the last 2 soldiers of the round spawned to my right. They were on the edge of my field of view, but their presence was threatening. Deal with the 2 in front of you, Zenron. I've got these 2. Got it, I said shakily. I didn't like the situation one bit. I didn't have support, and Leo would have to fight without cover. However, there was no way out of it. I'll defeat these punks quickly, then help Leo out, I thought. I drove forward to meet them firmly and met an incoming blade locking swords. I stepped back when the right soldier swung, but quickly stepped in with a shallow cut to force the one on the right back. I kept trying to step in from there, slicing where I saw an opening, only to meet a ready buckler. If I wanted to end this, I needed to take a risk. I shuddered at the thought of it, but I knew I couldn't let myself be ruled by groundless fears. I stepped briefly out of range and took a deep, shaking breath. Then, with renewed vigor, I rushed at the soldier on the left, swinging up from my left hip. It blocked with its blade, but with the opening I created, I lunged forward and knocked the soldier back with a front kick. I saw a blade coming in from the corner of my eye and pivoted to block the downward swing. I forced my way forward and grabbed the spawn's blade hand before circling around with my blade and cutting it across the neck. Immediately, the other one approached from behind. Looking back, I ducked the overhead swing and hit the spawn in the abdomen with a right leg back kick. Rotating over my right shoulder, I cut through the spawn's blade arm before swiftly cutting down the center for the finish. I turned to look for the next opponent, but only Leo remained. "Good job, my friend," Leo praised. "Thank you," I replied half-heartedly. I wished I could have helped him, but I was too weak. "Do you want to continue? I know we have not been able to complete the next stage yet, but today'll be different. Let's go." "Zenron." "Of course, I'll prepare myself," he said, quickly picking up arrows that he had fired. "Round 3 will now commence. Kill the armored bull to progress." Metamorphite balled up from the ground before extending into 4 sturdy legs, a long head, and a stiff armor-like hide all around. Darkness immersed the figure as sharp horns extended on either side. I hefted my sword and searched for a way to harm the bull. Before I got anything, it charged, and with that, my nerve quickly started to fade. I held my handle with both hands and swung the saber down on its head, grunting with exertion and trying to cause some blunt impact. Nothing. The best I could do was push it to the left a bit and dodge right. Leo fired at the head as well, with just as little impact, escaping to the same side. But the bull's recovery time was vanishingly small, and before I could turn to face it, it was after me again. I rushed my blade around for protection, but the charging head knocked it aside as if it was an annoying weed. It continued and hit me square in the chest, launching me into the air. I landed hard on my back and my lungs deflated. Once I got my bearings, I fought for air and for my footing as I watched Leo nimbly keep us in the round. Leo dodged with close movements. He didn't dodge around the bull, he dodged past it. But despite the bull's fast turns, it still couldn't keep up with him. But the speed was obviously taxing on Leo, and he didn't have a chance of getting a shot off or even maintaining the rapid motions. Scrambling, I saw the single arrow he had fired on the ground not far off and grabbed it with haste. I threw it at the beast immediately, but the throw was weak and the arrow dipped down. It just barely clipped the bull's underbelly, and liquid metamorphite dripped down. "There, Leo! That's the weak point!" Leo's eyes glowed with recognition, but the bull was faster. It turned its red eyes to me with an evil glow and rushed. A dark aura enveloped the monster as it faced me and ran me down with high speed. I wish I could say I faced it with courage, but that would be a lie. I froze. My legs were like lead in a winter storm, weighed and frozen to the ground. My eyes widened as if somehow taking in the terrifying creature would help me live. My heart pounded, pushing along blood whose strength would be wasted, just like it always did. The fury of that creature filled me with indescribable dread. I felt like its advance was going to end the entire world. Yet despite my paralysis, someone could move. Leo was on the bull's back before I knew it, and yanking the horns, he altered its path. Then, smooth as ever, he drove it right into the edge of the battle arena. The translucent fluid of the wall became thick with metamorphite that suddenly hardened into a black crystalline wall to concussive effect. The bull managed to keep its footing, but Leo jumped off and drew a knife, sliding beneath it and cutting through its organs before it had any idea what was happening. Just like that, the round was over. After being stunned for a moment, I got control of my heaving breath and my eyes relaxed somewhat. I forced myself to smile despite my shame. Leo walked in my direction casually, without any conceited swagger. I didn't want to bring him down in this great moment. Awesome job, Leo. Taking down the armored bull is a huge accomplishment. Regardless, I'm thinking we should resign before round 4 starts. I've had enough for now. Sure. Input command. Resign, he called out. With that, the liquid matrix around us followed a controlled flow down, and the dome dissipated. As I stared at the phenomenon intently, I suddenly felt Leo's gaze on me, and I turned to see his classic look of concern. I knew what he was thinking. The MTT has a safety in place. It's highly improbable that you'll be seriously injured, and death is impossible for healthy fighters. It would have stopped the fatal charge, ending the round. So why are you always freezing in place? But before he could say anything, I spoke to fill the silence. Man, am I tired. I think I stayed up too late last night. Sorry you had to deal with that, pal. I must have really spaced out for a second there. Leo raised his eyebrows in an unclear way. I couldn't tell if he saw through me or if he was ready to berate me for my failure to sleep properly. Ultimately, he decided to change the subject. That's fair, no big deal. I'm still sore from this week's physical exam, so that session wiped me out. Would you like to watch some Eastern animation before we continue training? Sure, I replied, acting less apathetic than I felt. We found a quiet place and gathered around my tablet, putting it into 3D projection mode. After some deliberation, we watched the 7th episode of Great Sword of Glory, in which a boy named Haru embraced his new ability to cause explosions, fighting off great droves of the heinous alien vampire zombies. He never hesitated in a fight, and none of the villains that went up against him stood a chance. This is ridiculous, I said with a laugh as he fired a massive blast at the engines and blew up the mothership. Things don't work like this, and he's fighting like an idiot. What? Are you implying we couldn't destroy a ship like that? Of course I am, I said, not trying to hide my grin. Explosions won't work on Gren steel. This is absurd. Well, we could figure something else out, Leo said distantly as he stared intently at the image of Haru landing safely on his planet. He held his chin like he did when he was thinking, but his face didn't scrunch up and his eyes were wide and happy. Sure, I replied. The close brush with death seemed like it might have scared the protagonist, but within the minutes of screen time, rumors of the sacred greatsword reached Haru, and he was thinking about his next adventure. I disparaged him outwardly, but if I'm really going to be honest, I admired what Haru represented. I envied his ability to fearlessly charge into any situation, and I would have done anything for the power it took to come out victorious each and every time. I was so far below someone like that. I was literally scared senseless of Lear-sized dangerous animal population, and this was far more crippling than my weakness. I have to become strong to be happy. It's the only thing I want. And yet, damn it, every time I try and change, my pathetic fears stop me in my tracks. It's like there's no chance. No, I can't accept that. I won't, I thought. As my back rested against a tall relic tree, I decided that, no matter what, I would beat my crippling fear. I would clear my mind somehow, and most of all, I would become stronger than anyone around me, strong enough to win my father's admiration, no matter the cost. That night, I enabled my tablet's holo projector, and, looking at the numerous applications represented by lines of wavy light in the air, I began to formulate my plan of attack. I poked my index finger at the calendar application, and a month appeared before me. Opening internet windows in a similar way and dragging them to all sides of the calendar, I searched out all of the training room availability for the next few days. While I typed that manually, I simultaneously issued commands vocally. Find me an article on the purpose of stone root and sannets. Also, what's the ideal stone root proportion based on my data? I'll also need some proven training strategies, preferably something I haven't seen before. And then search castle trainer appointments. Just because my father refuses to allow me a formal teacher doesn't mean I can't seek help out myself. He probably wouldn't like this, but He'll love the results, I thought. The best result I found for training was the experimental but well-reviewed survival gauntlet. It capitalized on an extremely useful quirk in Zexan physiology. Any stress on the body is taken as a signal to get stronger. In order to get the maximum benefit from the gauntlet, I would need to train at high intensity, at least once a day, for 3 consecutive days at a time with no more than 5 hours of sleep, allowing minimal time as much as possible. On the night of the 3rd into the 4th, I was to sleep as long as my body would allow, and then some, and eat voraciously. During this time, my body would gain strength based on all that was lacking in my distress over 3 days. Chemical pathways would be optimized, cross bridges in muscles would increase along with muscle mass, and more importantly, mana use would be stimulated to aid in these efforts and others. I had heard generals boasting about their gains from workouts like this, so that was enough proof of principle for me. The workout was not proven to be effective for adolescents, but I needed to give a try no matter what. To give it a try, excuse me. It was my only chance of becoming my best self and gaining my father's recognition. And, along the way, I could stand up to my fears. I issued another string of commands to open the diet app and a few tabs on nutrition. I reserved training rooms for midday times when I was ordinarily on a break, and planned my meals appropriately, specifically dragging different food items into the nutrition app so that the wonderfully helpful chefs would prepare me the ideal meals throughout the week. I then copied all of my appointments and meal times into my calendar to keep track. I then called out a command nonchalantly before laying down on my bed. Bookmark the new stuff, then close everything. Then, as I lay down, I let out a sigh and snapped my fingers, causing my room lights to fade out. My eagerness to start made it hard to fall asleep, but after a concerted effort to put my anxiety and excitement aside, I eventually fell into a deep slumber. And that was Chapter 2 of Catalyst. I really, really hope you enjoyed. If there's anything I could do better, please let me know in the comments. I would really appreciate it. Definitely reply to thank you and, kind of respond to your feedback. If you want to read the full text, it'll be up on Wattpad, link in the description. And that's where updates will be happening first. It's just obviously I have to write the chapter before I can audio record it, and I can't always do so immediately. So they'll be coming out there a little bit before they come out here. So you can definitely follow me there to get more frequent, not so much more frequent, but sooner updates. And other than that, I really hope you enjoyed. Chapter 3 is in progress, and I think that one's going to be actually really good because there's a character that I'm really excited to introduce. So I hope you enjoyed, and I really, really hope you have a great day. Take care.